Well, what's happening today is that, so today things that we never imagined paying for a generation ago, we now pay for, like water. When I was a kid, one time we were at a restaurant and there was this Perrier. And I'm like, Dad, what's that? And it's like, oh, that's water that rich people pay money to drink. It's like, okay. Little did we imagine that 30 years later, water would be the #1 beverage growth category in the economy, and that people would regularly pay for water to drink. If there's anything that's abundant on earth, it's water. But when it gets connected to money, which is fundamentally scarce because of the way it's created, water becomes scarce too. It becomes something you have to pay for. So anyway, so all these things, childcare, healthcare, entertainment, you know, people once sang for each other, now we pay for it. Everything has entered a money economy. There's almost nothing left, which means that the economy is growing much more slowly than it did in the 1960s, for example. This creates a crisis because money, as we know it, needs to keep growing, but we can't keep growing the economy because there's almost nothing left to convert into money. The crisis that we see around us fundamentally comes down to this. And I'm not going to go into too many details of that, but it's in my articles online. If you Google me, you'll find lots of stuff. If you Google Eisenstein and money, you'll find some articles. And so we're at a transition time. It's a you could call it a planetary shift, and it's also a shift in human consciousness. And I think everybody can sense that there's something bigger going on than just, okay, it's another economic recession and we're going to come out of it. I think everybody senses that all of these crises on Earth are converging together. It's not just an economic crisis, there's an environmental crisis, an energy crisis, political crisis, a crisis in education and healthcare. All of these things are happening at once. And I think that we sense that they're all connected on a deep level. What's changing is the way that we understand and sense ourselves. The revolution that's happening is a revolution in human beingness, in human identity. And this is something that's been gathering for thousands of years. The old self is the separate self. It's the self of Descartes. It's the self of Adam Smith, where I'm separate from you, and more for me is less for you. More for you is less for me. That's obvious, right? I mean, if I'm separate from you and here's something out here, either it's going to go to me or it's going to go to you. And that's why wealth, that's fundamentally, I mean, there's higher level reasons too, having to do with interest on money. But essentially, that's why wealth today is a matter of how much you have. In a gift economy, wealth is not a matter of how much you have. Wealth is a matter of how much you give. The most respected person, the richest person, the person with the most status is the one who gives the most. That's in Polynesia, Melanesia, the American Northwest, they had these potlatch societies where the chief was the one who threw the biggest party and gave the most away because he created the most bonds with other people that way. In our lifetimes, I mean, we're all pretty young in this room, we are going to live in a world where the greatest power and status goes to the person who gives the most, not the person who has the most. Goes to the person at the nexus of the most flow. We're just at the verge of it. And you know, there are other kinds of money systems that embody this principle of the richest is the one who gives the most. In such a system, and that'll, where can I go with that? Other kinds of money there are other kinds of money that do not violate the law of return. There are other kinds of money that are basically like bread. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but it's also in my writings. But you can design money that goes bad over time. some people are actually doing it online, and in Germany and Austria, there are several such local currency systems where the money goes bad over time, becomes less and less valuable, so you have to spend it quickly. And so if you need money and I have it, yeah, sure, here, I'll lend it to you, and pay me back whenever you have it.
Charles?
Yes?
How do you know we're on the verge? How do you know we're in this transition? Because I think a lot of people think that shit just will get worse.
Yeah.
So how do you know?
It's going to get worse for a little while. But there are just so many signs that we're running out of things to convert into money. And I mean, if you look, I don't want to go too much into the economics right now, but basically, in order to keep the system working that we have today, we have to keep increasing the amount of money. If there are no goods and services to associate with this money, to bring into the realm of money, then the amount of debt just increases and increases and increases. So let me just give you one example. Suppose you owe me a lot of money, and you can't make the payments anymore. There's two things that can happen. One is that you default, say, sorry, I'm not paying. The other, well, I don't want that to happen, right? Because then my money's gone. So I will lend you even more money to continue making the payments on the money you already owe me. And this is essentially what happened in the American economy for the last 10 years. And it's also what's happened in the world economy. Nations can't pay their debt, so we'll lend you some more. How long can that continue? It's mathematically impossible for it to continue forever. And what we're seeing now is just the last delaying mechanisms, to keep things going just to the very end. At which point, eventually, we're going to see hyperinflation of the US dollar and a collapse of the currency. But I don't want to try to go through too much of the evidence about exactly why this is happening, because it's better to read it. But I'd like you instead to feel it, to feel that we are at the verge of a transition, and it's something that we want. There's kind of this mixture of fear and longing when you read about peak oil, and read about the crisis. There's a part of, at least there's a part of me that wants that to happen in a way. It's like, yeah, bring it on. I want to live in a different world. So I'd like to offer you a couple business tips. The first business tip is how to get rich in the old world. In the old world, the essential way to get rich is to find anything that people still do for themselves or as part of a gift economy, and then take it away from them and then sell it back. So, for example, pollute the water and then sell them clean water. That's a good way to do it. Make it illegal to provide, put no trespassing signs up everywhere. And then open an amusement park where you have to pay to hang out. In America, there's almost no land where you can go. Like, you drive out into the countryside, and there's beautiful fields and forests and mountains, It's like, okay, I'm going to get out of my car and I'm going to go walking around. Oh, no trespassing, no trespassing, no trespassing. The only place you're allowed to go in America is the street and a park. But the rest of the land is closed off. In Europe, it's not quite so bad. A lot of this came about because of liability consciousness, and what happens if somebody injures themselves and sues me, and this kind of legalistic mentality is growing all around the world. But basically, take something away from them, make people afraid to actually connect with each other. Create cities where people don't know anybody. Cut people off emotionally so that we're out of the habit of actually seeing and touching and hearing a real human being, and make people so lonely that they will pay for